Beneath the Vatican lies one of the most mysterious archives in the world. According to some, it is the greatest repository of human knowledge. But what exactly are the Vatican archives? And what kinds of objects are stored there? In recent years, the Vatican has granted exclusive access to researchers, finally revealing the contents of the most important items in this legendary archive. And in this video, I want to show you what they have discovered. What is the Vatican Archive? The Apostolic Archive is located in the Vatican, the smallest city-state in the world and a sovereign entity. It is situated next to the Vatican Library, just a short walk from the Sistine Chapel and the magnificent Basilica of St. Peter. Today, most of the archive is housed in a specially constructed underground facility. It is a vast labyrinth of storage rooms spread across 2 subterranean levels. Inside are hundreds of thousands of individual items. In fact, if you were to line up the shelves end to end, they would stretch for more than 50 miles, roughly the distance from London to Oxford. Although no floor plan is available to the public, it is known that at the center is a highly restricted area known as the bunker, a climate-controlled vault that protects the archive's most delicate items. Overall, it is a maze of storage rooms, a network of shelves that seems to go on endlessly. For much of its history, access to this exclusive collection was reserved only for members of the Church itself. Because of the secretive nature of the Vatican archives, many have speculated about what might be hidden there. A quick online search reveals no shortage of claims, ranging from forbidden Christian documents to evidence of extraterrestrial life. These claims are unverified, and many are considered highly dubious. But one of the strangest stories associated with the Vatican archives does not come from conspiracy theories. Instead, it comes from the Church itself. This story originates with Father Pellegrino Ernetti, a Benedictine monk and former physicist who claimed to have built a device known as the chronovisor. This machine was said to be a kind of television that allowed users to witness historical events as if they were happening live. In other words, a time-traveling television. Ernetti claimed that he used the chronovisor to view scenes from ancient history and to confirm events described in the Bible. Along with his article was a supposed photograph of Jesus and his disciples. Naturally, Ernetti's extraordinary claims attracted widespread skepticism. Such a device lies far beyond the limits of accepted physics, and the image of Jesus bears a striking resemblance to a widely circulated Christian holy card. Nevertheless, Ernetti stood by his claims about the chronovisor, insisting that the Vatican had hidden it to prevent it from falling into the wrong hands. According to his testimony, the machine was locked deep within the Vatican archives, never to be seen again. If you think this sounds like science fiction, you are not alone. Skeptics believe it was a product of Ernetti's imagination. In any case, he continued to defend the existence of the chronovisor until his death. Over the years, rumors surrounding the Vatican archives have grown immensely popular, and honestly, it is easy to understand why. But I think many of these rumors stem from the very name of the archives themselves. Let me explain. For much of its history, the collection was known in English as the Vatican Secret Archives. The use of the word secret inevitably attracted speculation. That changed when the late Pope Francis renamed it the Vatican Apostolic Archive. According to his papal letter, this was done in an effort to dispel the reputation that the Church was hiding something. Name change or not, what many people may not know is that the archive has actually been open to researchers for more than a century. At the end of the 19th century, Pope Leo XIII opened parts of the archive to historians. For the first time, people outside the Church could visit the collection. If you want to visit, you can, provided you meet strict requirements. A master's degree in a relevant field, a letter of recommendation from a professor or university, and a clear description of the specific document you wish to view are required. I was curious, so I submitted an application of my own using the official form on the archive's website. Unfortunately, just minutes later, my application was rejected. For the lucky applicants who are accepted and successfully pass the interview process, temporary access to the Vatican archives is granted. So let us pretend we have made it inside. Congratulations! Now, where is the time machine? The real answer may surprise you. Walking through the Vatican archives, you are surrounded by rows upon rows of shelves, each holding thousands of items. So let us take a look at some of them. The reality of the Vatican archives is quite different from the movies. First, there are no booby traps. I am looking at you, Tom Hanks. What Angels and Demons does get right is that the Vatican archives contain official records of the Holy See, the central governing body of the Catholic Church. It is essentially a massive storehouse of papal bureaucracy. Broadly speaking, the contents of the archive fall into four main categories: papal letters, personal correspondence of the popes, state documents related to the functioning of the Vatican, minutes from church councils and judicial proceedings, and finally, a vast collection simply labeled miscellaneous. While much of this may sound like paperwork, a closer look reveals secrets that have been kept hidden for centuries. One such item is the Chinon parchment, which reveals the hidden fate of the Knights Templar. The Templars were a military order founded after the First Crusade, a series of Christian wars called to reclaim the Holy Land. During those violent years, the Order of the Knights Templar was formed. Initially, they sought to protect Christian pilgrims. Over time, however, they became one of the most powerful institutions in medieval Europe. With that power came enemies. The King of France launched an inquisition against the Templars, accusing them of heresy and devil worship. What followed was the arrest of thousands of Templars, many of whom were forced to confess to false crimes. Even their leader, Grand Master Jacques de Molay, was ultimately burned at the stake. For centuries, the accepted narrative was that this inquisition was supported by the Church. But that changed when researchers discovered a long-lost document deep within the Vatican archives, known as the Chinon parchment. It revealed a secret investigation by the Church that found the Templars innocent of the charges against them. In fact, the Pope absolved the order and quietly forgave the Templars in secret, though he never announced the pardon publicly. Despite being secretly absolved, the Templars were still destroyed. Why? Politics. The Chinon parchment reveals a power struggle between the Pope and the King of France. The king owed the Templars an enormous debt, and by dismantling the order, he could conveniently erase his financial burden. It appears that the king heavily pressured the Pope to comply. Had the papal pardon been announced publicly, the order might have survived. Instead, the document was buried in the archives for centuries. Another key collection of documents relates to the trial of Galileo Galilei. Among the most important records preserved in the Vatican archives are the original transcripts of Galileo's infamous trial. Galileo is considered one of the greatest minds in astronomy. After studying the movements of the planets, he defended heliocentrism, the idea that the Earth revolves around the Sun. At the time, however, the Church supported the doctrine of geocentrism, the belief that the Earth was fixed at the center of the universe. Galileo was brought before the Church's Inquisition and accused of heresy. These valuable documents outline the proceedings of his trial, including his own handwritten defense, in which he desperately argued that his scientific views did not contradict Christian faith. He was unsuccessful. Under pressure, he was forced to accept a plea bargain. In exchange for his life, Galileo formally renounced his support for heliocentrism. He spent the remaining years of his life under house arrest and never lived to see his scientific observations widely accepted. Only in the modern era did the Church officially acknowledge its error, pardon Galileo, and recognize his contribution to astronomy. Today, the Church has embraced science, and the Vatican even operates its own telescope in the southwestern United States. The deeper we go into the Vatican archives, the clearer it becomes that they are very different from how they are portrayed in popular culture. Rather than being a Christian version of Area 51, they are a playground for historians. What is housed here are primarily documents, original sources of history as it unfolded. And while there may be no time-traveling television, there is still a touch of science fiction to be found. Hidden within the archives is a concept for a flying machine known as the Passarola, designed by a Portuguese priest named Bartolomeu de Gusmão. These unusual drawings depict a bird-shaped aircraft with a large central sail flanked by wings on either side. Of course, the Passarola never left the ground and is one of thousands of fantastical aircraft designs that predate the age of flight. Still, credit where it is due, it was quite inventive, and it seems the church thought so too, choosing to preserve these drawings. Among the most fascinating treasures in the Vatican archives are letters sent to the church by historical figures. One such letter comes from one of history's most famous artists, Michelangelo, the designer of several Vatican landmarks, from the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel to St. Peter's Basilica. This letter, however, is far less glamorous. It concerns a payment dispute. According to Michelangelo, workers in the Vatican had not been paid for months and were threatening to quit. One passage reads, "This cannot continue any longer." Another significant document is the papal bull excommunicating Martin Luther. As you may know, Christianity is not a single unified religion but is divided into many denominations. One of the major divisions is between Catholicism and Protestantism. This document reveals the exact moment that division began. It is a papal bull signed by Pope Leo X, an official decree that formally excommunicated Martin Luther. Luther was a monk and theologian who became a fierce critic of the church, condemning what he saw as corruption. Over time, a reform movement developed around him and spread rapidly across northern Europe. This document contains the church's response to that crisis. Luther was forbidden to preach or participate in the sacraments and was permanently expelled. Only one official copy of this excommunication letter survives today. The second was sent to Luther himself, and he is known to have burned it in public protest. At the time, no one could have predicted the full significance of this document. It marked the first official break between Catholicism and Protestantism and sparked the Reformation. Soon, Christianity began to fragment across Europe, including in the Kingdom of England, where King Henry VIII appealed to the Pope for an annulment of his marriage to Catherine of Aragon. The archives even contain that letter, adorned with dozens of seals from English nobles. The Pope, of course, rejected Henry's request, prompting him to break away from the Catholic Church and establish the Anglican Church with himself at its head. The Vatican Apostolic Archive is one of the most impressive collections of historical data in the world. While it may not contain earth-shattering revelations straight out of a Dan Brown novel, it remains a remarkable collection in its own right. It is an extraordinary archive of documents, some of which sit at the very epicenter of world history. Regardless of what one might expect, the Vatican archives are not completely closed. In recent years, there has been a growing trend toward transparency. And yet, a sense of mystery still lingers within the archives today. One problem remains. Visitors seeking access must request specific documents in advance. This creates a paradox. How can you request a document if you are not even aware of its existence? Perhaps there are still hidden items within the Vatican archives that remain forbidden. One can only wonder. Thank you for watching. I had a great time putting this together, and I hope you enjoyed it as well. If you like this video and want to see more, consider subscribing. Liking and commenting also help a great deal. In any case, I look forward to seeing you next time. Goodbye.